everyone freaks out and like, wait, are we live? It's
Every
totally
single time.
every single time.
We're
But
always making weird faces.
yeah, but Jessica, yeah, like it'll come up with its custom thumbnail, Cheri. And
Oh, fun.
Jessica's usually good because she'll go, okay, guys, everyone smile now, and we'll like freeze,
Yeah.
like weird.
She's like our intro person. I don't know. She's got to keep us straight so that we
Yeah,
don't
man.
sound silly.
Well, to anyone dropping in and checking, we've already got some viewers jumping in. This is Grant with State of the Spark and the lovely Amber, and we are super honored to have Cheri Anderson. And I'll share a little bit of her background so you know pretty quickly why I'm honored. Not only is she like an acquaintance and a friend for almost a decade now, off and on it, maybe more in some capacity or another. Cheri has been filling her mind, her heart with a lot of really cool stuff. Just a few high points: certified life coach and trainer and counselor. And most specifically, I think that would impress like people, is that you were like an executive wellness coach for Nike, among other roles. And that's actually how we reconnected. For those who don't know, my brother called me one day and was like, I'm in this networking group with this person. And she says she might know you. And it's Cheri Anderson. It was a totally bizarre, serendipitous experience. She also hosts the podcast Unbreak Your Heart. And I was listening to the last few episodes, just catching up on what you talk about. And so I'm super pumped. And Amber, if you have a second, go back and listen to the podcast, because it's actually like skimmed like the Oprah one, but jump to the others because it's people's stories of breaking up. It's awesome stuff. But while we're here talking to Cheri today is emotional intelligence, among other things, which we'll talk about. And we were like, what's EQ and how is that emotional intelligence? And Cheri was like, duh, we call it IQ and it's intelligent quotient. So it's like, okay. So everyone, welcome Cheri Anderson to the show. Cheri, why don't you tell us what is EQ, emotional intelligence at the highest level for you? And then maybe we'll break down a little bit into like working genius here.
Okay. When I think about emotional intelligence, it can sound fancy or scientific, but it's as simple as people watching.
Oh,
you know,
I'm writing that down because I like watching. People watching.
Yeah. When you are observing people, you pick up on nonverbal and verbal cues through all the subtleties of the way our brain works. And you can sense this is how to read a person, how to read a scenario, how to read a room. And that is a simple example of emotional intelligence. You know, if someone's going across the street and you notice on the other side of the road, someone's watching and they see a car coming, you can watch the whole scenario. That person's concerned. I hope they get out of the way, or I hope that car slows down because they don't seem to notice each other. And in your mind, you have the intelligence, the capacity to pick up on all these different scenarios and see or notice what's actually happening. And it's your choice how you want to respond to it, if at all. But emotional intelligence is just the awareness of yourself. So you could go, oh, I notice that these are the things my brain is picking up on. My eyes see it, what I hear. Then it's others' awareness. What do other people experience and how are we interacting? Or how are we missing a connection through our interaction? The other two things about emotional intelligence are self-management. So in that scenario, I've just picked a super generic example of somebody else, like people watching crossing the road, but do I feel compulsive and I want to run across the street and tackle that person so that they, you know, like a superhero, like I want to make sure they don't get hit. But I'm carrying a lot of groceries and I don't know if I should drop them. Like, so how do I want to manage myself? Right. So that's just a fun superhero scenario to think about. And then it's social skills. How do you actually interact with somebody else? You might know, I can see that they're upset, but I do not have the communication. I do not have the language. I do not have the comforting or assurance inside of me to know how to then take this uncomfortable situation and move it forward. So there's a win-win, even if it's related to me or just on the other person's behalf.
So like, there's a basket of goodies right there. Like, I mean, that's a lot. And the first thing that comes to mind about this is that I think we societally simply attribute this to, oh, that person's an extrovert. They think this way. Like, unpack your experiences of like introverts, extroverts. Is this trait only genetic? or the
No,
skill?
it's human. So a fun way to think about it too is intelligence, your IQ, your intelligence quotient is pretty much fixed. So when you're born, you're embodied with the type of intelligence that you're going to carry throughout your life. You might be able to learn things that are not natural for you, but your IQ isn't going to change or improve very much, if at all, as you mature in age. EQ, your emotional intelligence, it the sky's the limit. You can you can
Hmm.
be somebody. I'm introverted, and let's say I don't smile that much. Like I'm in my head, I'm in my imagination, I'm taking things in, but I don't show my cards. So maybe that means I might be feeling happy or I might be feeling comfortable, but it might not be easy to read me. So if you learn that about yourself and you want people to feel like I am really enjoying myself and I want you to know that, you can say, "Oh, I'm just going to choose to smile." Like engineers is a good example. Like they aren't known for how often they smile or how much they grin, right? But they can come across like I might not be interested in you, but they really are. So they can learn, "Oh, I just need a smile." Even if it feels awkward, like it's stuff like that. If you're extroverted and you're talking to an introvert and you want to improve your EQ, and again, this is like super broad categories of generalizing types of people, but because I think we're all a blend of different people or different styles and different circumstances.
Hmm.
Extroverted people trying to talk to the opposite introverted person, your EQ, you might go, I'm so animated. I talk with my hands. I'm talking fast. Like I'm so excited. And you just see that person retreating, like you're overbearing. Maybe you're like, the joke of like being an up close talker, you're like in your face, like, and you're like, I need to back up and give them a little bit more personal space. Right. So like those tiny subtle things are really, really superficial versions of EQ. And you can learn that stuff and constantly have the ability to adapt.
So, I mean, I love hearing you say that because I think society. I've been noticing a lot lately that I've been engaged in a lot of like risky conversations that might fall into taboo, and it creates for these really uncomfortable conversations. But now that I've been pressing into them and watching whoever's on the other end of that conversation, sometimes my wife, sometimes a friend, sometimes a new acquaintance, and like someday other offline we'll tell you like how brazen some of these conversations are. But I need to because I start to feel almost victimized, stuck in my head if I cannot have this conversation. I've then begun to notice now that I'm pressing into these difficult conversations, I've been noticing and watching other people experience emotional distress
Mm.
and like even subtle emotional distress at a level I wasn't noticing before. And then we engage in a conversation to try to unlock that. And you realize that emotion that's coming out might not even have been the emotion, but the fact that they didn't have the ability to communicate it for so long, or they couldn't articulate it, or they didn't feel safe, all of its internal and external factors. Like, are you finding that the more you've been training and coaching this, I feel like this is the problem plaguing the West right now is the ability to articulate to articulate difficult things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like what is the source, I guess? What is the source of the stalemate that people are having with their ability to communicate their emotions?
Well, that's a very big question, Grant.
Oh.
It's like, what era did you know Cheri in? Well, what context is the stalemate happening? If you think about today in a society where we've learned how to operate with a greater percentage of our time online and less face to face,
Mm.
somehow it it justifies the things that we want to avoid, right? So, oh, I don't if it's optional to go into work, if I work from home, then I can avoid the person at the um, coffee pot that just gets under my skin. I avoid
Yeah.
the accountability of how I show up and am responsible for maybe just like my physical presence, my hygiene, like all these different nuances of everyday experience. When
Yeah.
we are around people, we are by default constantly being shaped, adapting, and learning and growing. And
Mm.
we accept it. Like we just accept that's part of the norm. So when that's part of the norm and that's how we've traditionally known the workplace to be. You also mentioned your wife, things like that, but you're right. Like we don't have a language. One of the things when I started learning about personality styles, it was the first time I had the thought there are more types of languages to learn in the world other than languages from another country.
Mhm.
So when you
Yes.
pick up
Interesting.
the communication style and the vocabulary words, five love languages, like, oh, I know this person likes gifts or physical touch versus acts of service. Like now you have vocabulary words to create containers of ideas to start to express yourself. It's always nice too to say, hey, I'm learning something new. I don't know how to say this. I'm
Mm.
probably going to mess it up. If you could just help me and be patient and let me fumble my way forward through saying this, if I if I prick a nerve, like it's not my intention, but I might do it because I haven't figured out how to polish what I want to express. And so when you start picking up these personality vocabulary words, you're literally learning new languages.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's huge. I remember actually an early encounter with our mutual friend Eddie. An early encounter when he was describing the stages of conversation. And
Mhm.
I don't even think back then. Back then, we were all as a group being exposed to DISC. And I think with our faith background, we had all been exposed to like the five love languages. But I think a lot of us were still in our late 20s, maybe early 30s, and still kind of piecing together our own compass of the world. And I remember him and our other shared friend, Jeremy, said, yeah, there's like what you want to say. And then there's the competence stare. That's what it was. You're unconscious incompetent. And so you're just fumbling through life, like bruising everyone, right? Then you're consciously incompetent, like, I'm sorry, I'm fat fingering everything. And the progression to like
Yeah,
then a
good
competence.
example.
What'd you say?
That's a great memory and really good example.
And so yeah, and so now we're developing this language. So I want to actually back up real quick to something. You are gifted in like a lot of things. Why are you kind of landing in the zone of? And I know that there's other things, and we want to talk about your workshop and how this pieced together with the Working Genius. But I feel like EQ has come up a lot for you in this season. Of all the modalities, of all the training, of all the skills that I know you have, why did you land, or why are you kind of zeroing in a bit on EQ?
Great question. It's an umbrella. Emotional intelligence allows me to take the collective types of trainings and interests that I have and channel them in the same funnel, so to speak. So
Mm.
baking doesn't particularly fit in the category of all the other things that I do. I like to bake, but if I want to really work with somebody or a team of people to shift, to catalyze them towards liberty, like you said in a few minutes ago, like you get in your head and you're having risky conversations. Why does it have to feel so risky? You know,
Mm.
why can't you just be? How do you learn to be yourself, be accepted for who you are, accepting of yourself, right? And even when we're on that journey to figuring that out as a leader at work, as a person on a team, as a spouse, as a parent, all of these different relationship dynamics that we have, there's so many questions and we carry the voices in our head. Well, maybe I regret the way I said that. Maybe I messed it up in the past, so I don't want to do it that way again, so I'm going to try it like this. But that the new way might be control. Like I might not be vulnerable and show trust. I'm just going to say it's this way now because the past I tried it the other way and it didn't work. You know,
Mm.
so we have all these voices in our head and they hinder us. They hinder us from our creativity, from being productive, from finding true solutions, from being a better connector, whether it's whatever the dynamic is. And
Mm.
we find ways to I like the picture of like origamiing ourselves, like all the folds, the full intention.
I like that. I like
That's
that.
awesome.
So we do it all the time, and I personally love to help people unorigami themselves. And like maybe if you're the shape of a swan, be the true swan, but you could be it without having to have hidden all of these other pieces to get that shape. So
Mm.
Wow.
it's a transformation process, and emotional intelligence gives me access in a way to help people who are entrepreneurs and leaders and really want to find joy and
Yes.
happiness and contentment, but are wrestling with the stuff that's in their head or the lack of communication skills or tools. And these are the tools that provide those solutions. And it's, for me, it's super rewarding because you get to partner with people for liberty, to joy, to satisfaction, to identity, all those types of things.
And this is the open wound. Like, we could explore a lot. Like, we could talk. So for those who are watching or might watch us later, Cheri's doing a phenomenal workshop that ties together EQ, Working Genius, which I do want to talk about in a moment, and DISC. But like, even DISC, it's a powerful tool. But the question I always had our shared friend to Joe Peachy, the thing I always asked Joe is, great, this is a great framework, but now what? And then we would talk about sales. And so all of these skills are really big. And Amber and I, we're launching like an entrepreneur training launching platform. And she's done a lot of good work redesigning our website. And so we're about to launch that. But one of the things that I always kind of come back on, sorry, I have landscapers. The thing I always come back to is this is all helpful and good stuff, but I'm doing all this to earn the right and the rapport to talk about what really matters. And that's like, what's going on in your head, bud? So you're just going right for it. So like, how long, I mean, you're doing this workshop, but you've been doing EQ for a while, right?
Yes.
Roughly how long have you consciously and intentionally been working with emotional intelligence?
25, maybe 28 years.
Stop it. Like, what was your first introduction? Like, what was your first conscious encounter with emotional intelligence training or coaching or any of that?
It was probably when I was 11 or 12.
What?
Wow.
What is that memory
Were
like?
you
Tell
in
me
like
about
a
that.
gifted and talented program or something?
Actually, what happened through tragedy? It happened through tragedy. We lost someone in our family, and it happened while my parents were out of town. Someone passed away, and not, the death is never great, but like it was a very unexpected way, and it shouldn't have happened that way around children. And so from that experience, we were then ushered into options for how to cope with that type of tragedy. And that was the first taste I got of exploring emotional intelligence.
And so like consciously you were aware enough at that age that, wow, here's other tools I could pull from.
I was so hungry for it. Like as soon as it was available, I was like, yes, I need more of this. And it resonated in me because that's just naturally how my mind worked. But it's not like my parents were walking around like pulling out these secret hidden gifts about me. That was just so we're gonna get into this, but in the Working Genius, people who have wonder ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
They just thought I was being nosy. Like, none of your business. The joke, my family, my uncle, my dad, like I just remember them saying it constantly. Hey, I'd be like, why are you, like, maybe I'm like 7 years old and I'm like, why are you writing in a checkbook? Like, what are checks? They're like, what are you writing, a book? I'm like, no. Well, leave this chapter out. Like it's just like
I
just thought I was nosy all the time. That's my gift of wonder. So
interesting.
It's an
Interesting.
interesting insight because I can think of myself the way other people have described me because of how it is uncomfortable for them versus think of myself as this is my unique genius. Like this is a genius gift that I have and it brings me so much joy. They might like it because they want to be more secretive, but for me, I'm like, let's expose things.
Wow. That's wild to hear. I think at that age I was still drawing Ninja Turtles, if I'm not mistaken. But I will say though, like we go to our coping mechanisms. Like I'm an extroverted, highly aware person. And I don't know if that was trauma induced, like a hyper vigilance, right? Mm-hmm. Or if it was just I'm also very curious about people. If they kind of look askance, I'm like, hey, what's going on there? And maybe it's too much, but my living embodiment of my wonder, my curiosity, is like being asked to no longer be part of a church because I wonder about a doctrine. I'm like, hey, why do you actually believe in hell? Like, and it's like, not welcome here. It's like, wait, like I thought we were all full of awe and wonder. And it's like, no, not everyone.
We're not all asking questions. Okay.
No, man. So this is huge. Well, we've mentioned it, so let's go to it.
Okay.
Talk to me about Working Genius. This is actually my first real exposure to Working Genius. So what is it? Where did you hear about it? Yeah, let's start there. What
Okay.
is Working Genius? Yeah.
I heard about it through our shared friend Jeremy. He's
Mhm.
like my knowledge, tree that everything he learns trickles down to us in our community.
Yeah.
I think it's only 4 or 5 years old. It's a pretty young model, but the table group, Patrick Leccioni, is the one who created it. And there's a book about it. He's got an amazing podcast. And it's a model that really comes with 6 elements. They spell the word widget. So you have wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity. And your combination of those 6 things in 3 categories. So 2 geniuses, 2 working competencies, and 2 working frustrations.
Got to account for the working frustrations.
Yeah. So when you
Okay.
figure out what your blend is, you're like, it starts to click. Like, no wonder I show up in the world this way.
Okay, I got to hear because it's obviously the thing that stands out. Give me an example of a working frustration. Like, can you describe that?
So for me, let's say galvanizing. That's my working frustration. So if I have to be the person that's in charge of getting everybody on the team or the project to do the work, like, hey, you need to be showing up, getting it done, be accountable to it. Like if I have to project manage the tasks of the people to get the thing done, it
Yeah.
is like torture for me. I'm terrible at it. I feel like a collapsed version of myself. Like it is really, really difficult, and I feel incongruent. Like if you wanted me to walk around like the opposite version of myself, it just feels so unnatural. So in projects where I'm the one that has to pick up that slack, or I'm the only one that sees that it needs to get done, it's my responsibility. It's really, really challenging for me, which I can push through it, but I'm really aware of how uncomfortable and unhappy I am while doing it.
We're only laughing because this is you're describing myself.
Okay.
Like, you're describing my bugaboo.
I didn't say it.
You didn't
I didn't
have
say
to.
It. Yeah.
No, yeah, you are very much. And Grant and I just had to talk about it this morning, which is what makes it even funnier.
Hilarious.
Yeah, I can
So-
definitely understand what you're saying there.
So like, just so that we understand the framework, widget is 6 letters, and there's 3 categories. So each category takes and claims 2 of those letters,
Correct.
and 2 of them are like your working genius, 2 of them are your working frustration, and then 2 of them, what was the other category?
Competency.
Competency. Interesting. Okay, and can you give us, as a living example, your own? Yeah. What? So you already gave us one, galvanizing, but please unpack that just as a living example for us.
Sure. So my top 2, my genius is wonder and discernment. So
Okay.
I like to ask a lot of questions. I like to consider. So let's say there's a project or a deliverable that we want to work on, or something we're trying to launch. There might be the person that says, hey, here's what we're going to do. Here's the options of how we want to do it, or why we're doing it. And I will come alongside of that project and say, well, why are we doing it with this person and not this way? Well, what if we think about it from this perspective instead of from that perspective? Well, I understand what you're saying. I see the scope, but these areas seem to not be so connected. So what about this or that? So I start seeing things and perceiving things, and I will ask questions. So that's a gift for me.
And in those examples, knowing your heart, like I feel like I know your heart. We're not very close friends, but we've known each other for a while. And so like I feel like I know your heart. I could imagine a stranger or a team member who I don't know for over 10 years come in and go, well, why aren't we doing it this way? And the next thought is, so you think you know better.
Right.
And it's like, and in your case, I may or may not, I'm literally acting upon the urge to ask and maybe to understand. Now, you might also have an inkling that there's a better way to do it, but you come at it from a spirit of, I'm not certain.
Right.
It's an intuition. And I'm asking, and intuition isn't empirical, but see, in that sincerity. So first off, let me back up and just say, you've mentioned working genius before. And listen, I think me well enough. I have seen every system. This is, well, not every, like I haven't seen this one. I've seen a lot of systems and I start to grow callous like, okay, another system. But you describing this, especially watching it trigger Amber and I, like I can see why you guys are doing a workshop on this. This is empirical. And I'll have to make sure I drop the link in the show notes when we repost the show. I'll also try to drop in the comments. So please make sure I have that link so I can share that, because that alone is powerful. So when you do these trainings, how do you tie together working genius and emotional intelligence?
It's a tool in which to explore your emotional intelligence and improve it. So emotional intelligence is an umbrella. I mean, if it's just as simple as people watching, because you're self-aware, others aware, and then you decide how you're going to manage yourself and how you want to interact with others. Like, it's a big category. But when you're at work, we spend so much of our time working. It doesn't matter if it's in an office, if we're self-employed or a solopreneur, if we're doing task stuff or people stuff, right? Like, we just spend a lot of our time working. Even with a family, we're managing projects. Like, I want to go on a vacation. You have so much planning to do, right? So life is full of operational experiences. We need tools to help make those experiences more efficient, more productive, and more successful. So that could be I get more quality time with the people that are important to me. It could be I've allocated the right time and resources, whether that's money or people, into the right position at the right time. So then our ROI is better, because now we've freed up people from doing stuff that you don't naturally have a genius for, put them and apply them where that genius is missing. And then all of a sudden you've restructured an organization by just recognizing your team and where their genius is at. And then things start to move forward because you're not unnecessarily experiencing conflict and discomfort. Like, we're going to feel it anyway, but now we can be intentional and really have a tool to give us direction. And it's not like we have to change ourselves. So I just want to speak to a myth really quick. So it just popped in my head as I'm saying this. A lot of times I've been doing these types of trainings for a long time, and people sometimes feel uncomfortable learning, like, oh, this is my personality style, because we already know, like, I'm abrasive, I'm a pushover, people think I'm too demanding, people think I'm too nice, etc. Like, we kind of have all these sensitivities. So then to see it spelled out for you in a report, and a coach be like, yep, check, check, check. Like, people are like, I don't really want to do that. I'm good. But this is like, when you ask me, like, why do I do this? It's getting in there and going, no. You've been misunderstood and you've had to be defensive.
Yes.
And you've been mistreated, or you've misbehaved out of that place of being misunderstood, either by yourself or by others. And so when you have somebody who knows how to see you, so you can get the tool, you can take these assessments. Like, I love them. I've taken several of them, but they've never come alive to me until I've been in an environment where a speaker or facilitator has connected the dots and given me enough context where I can see myself and go, like, I could get goosebumps, right? Like, oh my gosh, I thought my boss hated me, but he needed a detail-oriented assistant, and I am terrible at details. So I shouldn't have been hired for that job in the first place. I was capable of doing it, but I would never succeeded because that wasn't what my boss needed from me. And I took that on as, I'm a terrible employee. But I'm not a terrible employee. That's just my work frustration. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. And you're just one shade or one temperament away from it actually being the opposite. Same scenario, different temperament. And I have a shit boss.
Exactly.
And it's like, well, that may be true, but it's not necessarily true, because listen, I mean, I've got on this shelf, like, I'm a big fan of Michael McKellowitz's Clockwork material. He constantly talks about, and you and I have heard till we're, numb to it, right butts in the right seats, doing the right things right. And it's like, well, that's good. And DISC is powerful because, I mean, it's very general, but it's very empowering to go, oh, okay, detail-oriented extroverted, detail-oriented introvert. It's like, okay. And it's been the best tool generally that we've had for many years, honestly, better than Myers-Briggs in my opinion, better than Enneagram. it's applicable, but I've learned over time it's a little two dimensional,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
And so this element of working genius versus especially working frustration adds almost like a Z axis to it. You know what I'm saying? Like a third.
Exactly. It makes me so excited. That's super well said.
Yeah. You
I
know what
mean,
I'm saying?
and I saw it because I love Disc. Like, Disc is how I started working with Nike and so many other corporations.
Yeah.
And again, like, it's a great tool. Like, you get this aha, you get this burst of energy. But what I found where it falls short is if you aren't a person who naturally wants to dig and know, like, if you're not a self awareness junkie, I'm not going to say self growth, like personal growth, but like self awareness, like where you really want to know, like, who am I? How am
Mm,
I this way? Where does this come from? All those. If you're not like digging into that because you're just not interested, it's no
mm,
judgment. It's just
Mhm.
not where you're inclined to think and ponder. It
mhm.
it doesn't give you much leverage in knowing yourself and knowing how to apply it on a daily level. Working
Yeah.
genius adds to the model and your EQ, that Z axis. Like, it is exactly
Mm,
that. Like, oh my gosh, I know I'm Wonder. So now when I'm working with my business partner in Good Life Productions, I'm literally his working frustration and he is literally mine. We are opposites.
I mean, we've known that, but like, I mean, hearing it that way.
It's true, right? So it's been so fun for us to take this model and go, the reason I'm about to tap out, whether that means like I want to like knock you out or I need to run away. Like, if we get to that level of stress, we realize, oh, we're pinging our capacity in our working frustrations. So, Cheri, your
Mm,
wonder is really stressing me out, or it's causing me so much fatigue. Or, Eddie,
mm,
your galvanizing and tenacity is overbearing and like it's overwhelming me because I'm trying to function with discernment. I don't
mm,
need to know all the details and all the facts. Like, I can just know yes or no. It's off or it's on, it's in the right direction or it's not, and I can't explain it. But I don't have to now have the pressure of being the one to have to explain it. Not that I'm
yeah.
going to be irresponsible and flaky, but I'm not being lazy. I'm just gifted to discern this is one way or another. And that's not his
Mhm.
strength. So now that we see it, we can just go, hey, let's slow down. Let's take a break. We don't need to, like, at this stage of the project or conversation, we're not going to get further because we're now both of us in our working frustrations. So one of us
Mhm.
has to compromise or just take a break, or we go, oh, hey, we need a different person that has a genius where we don't. And they're going to come in and help take the project to the next level. But now we know how to do that without it being like, why are you so frustrating to talk to? Why are you so frustrating to listen to? It's so liberating. Like, it's really fun, and we can have a good sense of humor about it now, and it's not personal. Like, it's not like I'm a terrible communicator anymore. It's like, oh, that's just you
Well,
have
and
other
so
things
many
that
we hit these impasses of dialogue. And like now that you're describing, and I'm going to borrow some of this language, we hit our working frustrations. We feel like I'm not being heard, or we feel like my efforts are not being seen. And those we could talk about NLP and kinesthetic versus visual. Like I'm describing that. I don't feel heard. I don't feel seen. And so both of us, it's like we're both trying our best. Yeah. So is it going to get any better? I don't know how many times we looped on this dialogue in the last month, you know? And it's like, I don't know. And so you're right. Then people get tapped, and tapped looks a lot of different ways: quiet quitting, actual quitting, blow ups. And it's like, is there not another, I guess in this case, language set that's not overly complicated, like say NLP or Enneagram or Myers Briggs, overly complicated? Um, so let me ask you this. Like, so in DISC, I'm a DI by like a half point difference between the two. My natural,
Mhm.
which means, Amber, like I'm mission driven and I'm extroverted with people, and I'm like at a 9 out of 10 and an 8.5 out of 10 in both those, neck and neck. My next temperament closest is an S temperament, which is introverted, people oriented, kind of the secretarial. And Cheri knows this, Amber might not. But that one is like out of 4. It's like this huge gap. And so what I've learned, and I don't know if you've seen this similar, so I'm drawing a parallel in DISC to ask about working genius. When being like task driven, mission driven, galvanizing, if you will, if I can't get my way with that and I hit my limit, I then shift gears to my secondary, which is my I, and I get very charismatic. I make people chuckle. Hey, you know what I'm talking about? And I try to get people going with that one, but I'm also a little less skilled at that one than I am the first one. And when that one doesn't work, I usually snap. I usually go, well, let me serve you because I haven't gotten what I want, but I'm also the least mature in this, right? Like I'm very bad at it. And so like I go to these defaults and ultimately if I'm just doing it myself quietly in the corner, chances are I'm like rage crying, like why, because I'm just so immature at it, but I'm just doing it myself all through the weekend because I can just get it done alone. Like that's me cycling through disc. Is there a similar process of someone falling apart in Working Genius? Like, do they cycle through that way, or does it operate a bit different?
I think there's a good parallel. I wouldn't say it's exactly the way you explained it, but
Mm-hmm.
Patrick is great at this testimony, the inventor of this genius model.
Mm-hmm.
He loved his company, loved what he did, loved people he worked with, loved what they were doing for their clients, but he found himself grumpy at work every day, and he
Mm-hmm.
couldn't explain why. Once they
Mm-hmm.
created the Working Genius model, they did a team map to see where does everybody land. They were able to describe all the different types of geniuses and understand where their competencies and frustrations would be. And
Mm-hmm.
he found that his working frustration is galvanizing. So that's rallying, inspiring, organizing others to take action. So he's
Mm.
CEO, and you would assume as CEO that should just be your part of your roles and responsibilities.
Yeah.
Inspire others to take action. It's his working frustration. He hated it. So, like you're saying, he goes into a state where he's not operating out of joy.
Mm.
He could do it. It's part of getting the company to succeed and going through the motions every day, but it
Wow.
was draining him, right? So if you had to operate out of your S, people oriented, but more slow paced, more reserved, it takes the life out of you. It takes your breath away. It takes your life force. Like battery just drops super low. So that's why you're going to be a less pleasant version of yourself, a less capable version of yourself in maturity, because it's
Yeah.
not your design, but you're human, right? So you can adapt and figure it out, but you're not going to be doing it out of joy. And so you learn
Yeah.
those things. And so they found somebody on their team that was really young in the company. He was only there for a few months. His working genius was galvanizing, so they offered him a job of chief galvanizing officer.
That is amazing.
Isn't it? And the company thrived. Like he said, within 2 years, they expected the 2 new hires that they got to get all the stuff done. They got it done in a few months.
What?
And so they changed their ROI exponentially. They were able to create new initiatives because now, as a CEO whose genius was like, I think it's invention and wonder,
Yeah.
able to co-create and focus with his team where his genius was at, and then let the person who does galvanizing run with that type of role. And so the
Yeah.
whole company just transformed when they had the right people in the right place. And then he's not grumpy anymore. He haven't had a good day every day.
Bonus.
But it's like what you're saying. So does that parallel make sense a little bit?
Yeah, I know. It's a great anecdote. I was going to ask you, like, I'm sure I didn't realize you've been doing this so consciously for so long. So this is probably a bit broad, but do you have a go-to anecdote you always tell when it's like, man, I've seen a lot of aha moments, but this one aha moment is something you always tell. Do you have one you always go to?
I want to come up with one right now, but I don't think I do.
Okay. If you do, I want to hear it because like if I know as a coach there's always those stories of like, I feel like I tell this story all the time, but there was this one moment that Susie
So
Q.
my version of that, because I don't have an actual anecdote, I'm a question asker. Like I'm a I'm a highly skilled surgeon, like a heart surgeon or a brain surgeon, but in emotions, in
Mm,
spirituality. So to the extent that you would, esteem a brain or heart surgeon, like I would say I'm on par with that in exploring what's going on inside of you with EQ and SQ. So I'll ask, do you know what your motive is? Like you can come up if you guys want to give me a scenario, like, and you want me to practice this with you, like we can do
mm.
a little practice of it right now.
Oh dang. Okay,
Oh,
I got
like you're getting flush.
no, no. I mean, this is good. This is good. Um, okay, so let me think of something. You know, because with team, you gotta be safe here.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a good example.
Yeah, of working genius. And then like I'm also wondering about like my not crypto bro crew, and I'm like, wait, are we like what do we do? Okay, okay. Even if he's watching, because I see some viewers, and my guy Jarrett is watching all the time. Jarrett and I have been doing our other show about crypto almost 2 years, and we immediately get along. He and I are very extra. We have shared extroversion, and we just got back from an awesome conference in Austin. We get along so well. And there's a challenge we're having on picking the direction of kind of how we're doing the show. Like we do our show weekly and it's perfect. And I don't even know what my working genius is. I won't even pretend, but I'm an extrovert and I'm a visionary and I'm like, we want to do X, Y, and Z. And he always comes back with, this is just a distraction, man. And I mean, and thankfully, I thank God that this has not caused arguments, but it is creating an impasse of like strategy and tactics.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say like this is like a living frustration, and he knows it. Like we talk again, we joke about it, we go on the show and joke about it, but like it does also create an impasse. So even if he's watching this, he knows my heart, he knows where we're at. But this would be a living example. So like how would this go, or what more detail do you need?
Well, what would you hope to see happen differently with you and Jared when you guys experience that type of impasse? What would you like to see happen differently?
Well, for using disc temperament profiles,
Okay.
and Amber, the context clues will make sense pretty
Yeah.
quickly. The D in me is like, well, I just want him to go, that's a great idea. And we just move forward with it. So, I mean, that would be an honest answer.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So that's the honest answer, but does he challenge you or does he resist you?
You know, I don't know how to actually answer that. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Does he come across more collaboratively or more argumentatively or disagreeable?
I think it definitely varies. Generally, and I mean literally 90 to 95% of the time, it is collaborative. But sometimes it's just like non-negotiation. I thought we weren't doing that.
So
And
you changed the expectation. So he thought you had agreed, we're not doing that. And then somehow it's up again.
yes,
Okay.
that's true. Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing?
It was just like a little, oh yeah, that's true. A little confession.
That's true. I mean,
Mhm.
okay, therefore
So-
what?
So if you're wonder,
Yes.
if you're galvanizing, hey, I have this idea, let's take action.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So those are your working geniuses. How do you have discernment which ideas to apply when?
How do I discern?
How do you know if it's a distraction? How do you know if it's for now versus later? How do you know if it's all of the idea or just part of the idea? Or maybe none of the idea? How would
Wow.
you know?
Well, I mean, the answer would be obvious. Like if I decide it is, but that yeah, that historically it's like, well, if we hit a wall, it's kind of like if I usually it's a resource. Hold on. So it's just so you know who this is. This is our other compatriot, Jessica Ojeda, sitting in an airport somewhere, and she was dying to be a part of it. She does energy code sessions, and
Yeah.
I think Amber can and I can know that Jessica would be
She would
dying
love
to be
this.
on the show right now
Yeah.
because she loves these topics. So yes, yes, Jessica, I don't mind being in the hot seat. Generally, when I feel like I'll tell you this is actually really great awareness. When we have an external wall that cannot be overcome. is my rubric. If it comes from internal, I dismiss it as being basically a non-believer.
Mhm.
And that's not just true of like, I'm now thinking beyond not crypto bros. Now that you're saying this, it really is my, like, all of State of the Spark, anything I've ever done. I literally dismiss any internal resistance as naysayers, and it has to be an external. Money's not there, the market doesn't respond. You know what I'm talking about. So that's generally been my rubric.
Yeah. So I would invite you to explore.
Now I know your word tracks. Okay.
I'd like to make them nice and clear. Um, so the idea is, right, like anything that we're doing for emotional intelligence is we want relationships. We want to thrive in relationships. And one of the ways that we can do that is with trust. One of the ways we build trust is by being vulnerable, right? So right now you're in the hot seat, you're being vulnerable, you're being honest. You're like, hey, I can confess this and this. I see this, I'm admitting this. Now that you have that awareness, oh, hey, I become dismissive. So if I can confess that versus become the naysayer and become the D, it's my way, it's my company, or it's the highway, right? So that's a non-trusting, non-vulnerable, non-collaborative mindset. It's supernatural. Like it doesn't matter that you're having it, but now that you have the awareness when it's happening, you can maybe say, what don't I trust right now?
Yeah.
And maybe Jared, I think that's who you said we're
Jared,
using
yeah.
as the example, can explain it better or differently. Maybe he can show me how to see it through his eyes in a way that our banter, our common vernacular isn't allowing us to explore. Or maybe I need to say the way he delivered it or the timing, right? Because maybe you're just like in a go, 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 go mood and he throws something at you and it's just the wrong moment to tell you, hey, I don't think that we should act on that. And you're like, no, we're doing it, dude. Because you're just moving, right? But like if you're in a different place where you're calm and you're contemplative and you're thinking through things, because in your wonder, you're going to explore all types of things. You might say, hey, this is a much more productive moment in time for us to have those types of conversations. So like there's different ways you can tackle it or approach it, but there might be something that you're not trusting or that's being delivered in a way that hasn't made itself clear to you, right?
Yeah.
So you're somebody that wants to say yes, and you're definitely someone who believes in getting things done and having an awesome team and doing it together. So when the no does come up, or when you feel the no coming up, it's a really awesome invitation to explore trust.
I am going to use this with my children.
This is an awesome opportunity. Yeah, I like your word track, Cheri. That's huge. So let me ask you this: as an extrovert with diarrhea of the mouth, by pain or whatever, I have been fortunate enough to have bounced off enough of negative situations to have honed the ability to communicate. And I find a lot of these tools are huge. I found it like when we would critique a lot of disc, basically the extroverts and the D temperaments get hit with the stick all the time. And my question is, what is the introvert's version of this? Where it's easy for me to get vulnerable and to be in the hot seat. You know that about me. Like I don't mind the hot seat. How do we invite, and Jarrett is too, like Jarrett would jump on the show if he were watching, he'd be like commenting right now.
Yeah.
Amber knows that.
I'm surprised he's not.
Me too. He normally is. So how do we invite, even when we're trying to get introverts to speak, the command is to the extroverts. Hey, you settle down. Hey, you be quiet. Hey, you change your behavior so that we can nurture this other behavior. How does that look? Maybe from all these disciplines, not just from Working Genius, but how can we create an environment where extroverts are able to be authentic, but introverts also feel secure?
That's an amazing question. So let's just practice it with the Working Genius model. So we've mentioned wonder a lot, galvanizing a lot. Tenacity are people who like to finish things. Like once a project's started, they get satisfaction and joy from seeing it done. Like there are people on teams who are like, we have all these great things that we're doing, but we seem to never get them done. Well, they don't have somebody on the team with tenacity, or maybe they have a person on the team with tenacity and they get overwhelmed because everything falls on them to be the one to get it all done. So there's also enablement. People who have the genius of enablement are, in my mind, a lot of times it comes comparably to an S or an SCCS, you know, so they're really comfortable with tasks, really comfortable with routine, and it doesn't matter if it's like people oriented or project oriented, they like to help the process in getting the things done. They like to be the team player. They don't need to be front and center. If they are, they probably will adapt to it, but like they just are part of getting it done, and they're super successful at being supportive in that whole process. Discernment, we talked a little bit about. People who are discerning just have a sense, like they know. They don't have to have all the details or all the facts or all the information. They don't have to have proof per se, but they're gifted with discernment. We need those people because let's say you're an inventor. So Grant, maybe like another one that you explore, we haven't taken your working genius, but maybe it's inventor. Like you're coming up with new thoughts, new ideas, new models, new ways all the time, right? Yeah. But without wonder and without discernment, someone who's an inventor doesn't have any buffers. So why not do all of them?
Interesting.
So if you're on a team making products or trying to deliver services and you're the inventor, I mean, you can waste a lot of time and money without having wonder and discernment around you, right? You don't have enough of the insight or perspective to go, this is why this one wouldn't work now or might not work at all. This is why it would drain things from our team and our resources. This is why it might not impact the community the way we hope, even though the invention might be wonderful. But if you don't have wonder and discernment to piggyback inventors, they can be lost in the forest or the trees, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's great, man. Wow. So, I didn't know.
I actually answered your question, but
no. I mean, I was asking an introvert question, but the working genius context is fine because it and like I said, it's like a 3-dimensional version of DISC actually, because part of DISC Amber is like introverts versus extroverts and task oriented versus people oriented. So I'm referring to that kind of synonymously. But working genius is kind of a third dimension there because of the 2-dimensionality of DISC at times. It's easy to get caught in a binaries. I'm conflicted because I'm juxtaposed between an introvert and an extrovert. And it's like, well, you painting the picture of working genius kind of goes, well, things aren't tempered, is what it sounds like, you know? And if everyone respected this other dimension, it's not that the discerning person is correct. It's just that they're discerning. And it's not that the inventor is right. We should just go invent this new whiz-ding. It's just a good idea, and the temperament allows us to, or the tempering allows us to, I guess, navigate in the middle. You know, I didn't know anything about working genius. I knew about your genius, and it's evident from this conversation that there is more for us to explore. Amber, maybe we'll actually grab this as our next book.
I was thinking that this whole time.
Were you thinking that?
Yeah.
So we do book study together,
Okay.
and we just did Tribes, a marketing book, but we've been kind of stuck. Like, what are we going to do next? It's like, I don't know. This is pretty good. So real quick, what were we going to say?
It's a fun one. That's a good choice.
Yeah. What is the best website for people to follow or check out your workshop? Because like, I'm sold on this conversation. Like, where do we find more information on the workshop?
GoodLifeProductions.com. I believe so.
Okay.
I wish this wasn't live because I feel embarrassed to admit it, but those types of details don't stick out in my memory.
Let's see. It looks like that is not you. Out on the floor, shaking booty, making sweet love all night. I don't think that's you. That is not.
Please let that be you.
No, that's not. That's not at all, Cheri.
The SEO title for the page is #Good Luck Production.
Good luck, what?
It's just I'm just laughing at the names and the
Yeah. I mean, SheriAnderson.com, is that updated? Maybe you have your links there?
It's not on there, no.
Okay. We
I
can
got
do
it
this.
right here. I got
Oh,
it.
do you? Okay.
Goodlifeproductions.org.
Ah, okay. Goodlifeproductions.org.
I bet they're not booty shaking over there.
No, probably not.
Okay, expand, explore, empower. Okay, I'm going to drop this in the show notes right now so that everyone can see it, and then I'm going to put it up on the screen, and then we'll also grab this in the show notes. And this has the information for the Leadership EQ workshop right there at the top. Listen, this has hit us between the eyes, like literally with a living example that's less than 12 hours old, and we won't share more than that at the time being. But it was hilarious. So if you're watching this, people, you got to check this out. Goodlifeproductions.org. Check out the Leadership EQ workshop. It's October
You can
3rd.
also find it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, you could also find it on the Facebook Good Life Productions page.
Okay.
So that's another option.
Very cool.
It's 10 weeks. We're starting October 3rd. We're
Okay.
doing it at the lunch hour from noon to 1:30 on Zoom, just like this. So
Okay.
you'll have to travel, save you some time. You're going to get a copy of the Working Genius book. You're going to get a copy of a personality book. You're going to get a link to both your Working Genius assessment and your DISC personality assessment.
Oh, this is rich. Okay. So, this is rich, man. Wow. So I cannot wait to actually clip my hot seat and then clip her describing the working frustration and our visceral facial responses to this. Cheri, I can't thank you enough for this. You're out in Portland making time for this. This is huge. And are you going to be doing this course from Portland, from Lakeland? Where are you going to be? Just traveling?
I'll be traveling. I'll be on both coasts, different times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, everyone, I hope that you've gotten as much value as we have. Cheri, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Grant. Thanks, Amber. This was so much fun. I loved it. Your
Come back anytime.
super pleasant and joyful.
Thanks so much. Everyone, watch for the replay soon. And if you need anything, check us out at stateofthespark.com or Spark My Site. Thanks so much.